Hey ED840, this is Sherry Wills. I am actually recording this from my iPad, and it's so different and weird, but I was going to do it from my MacBook, but Photo Booth keeps crashing on me, and I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing with Macs. So anyway, this is coming to you from my iPad. So this week we're going to talk about our biography that I chose. And before I get into the nitty-gritty of the book, I have one question for you to ponder while I finish talking about the book. And the question that I have in mind is, have you ever been in a situation where you either chose not to speak or you were forced not to speak, but while this conversation was going, you were either screaming at someone in your head or you were kind of having this conversation of your own where you kind of adding your little commentary and having your little viewpoints of the world, but not knowing at all, how to say it or whether you should say it, or I know everybody's been in that awkward position of, should I say something? Should I not say something? So you guys know exactly how that feels and how frustrating that can be, especially whenever, this is happening. Well, imagine having all these thoughts in your head and have them be absolutely crystal clear and have no way of showing it and having no way of verbalizing that to someone. And that is actually the co-author of this book, and this is actually her struggle up to this present day. The book I chose is actually called I Am In Here, and Elizabeth and Virginia are co-authors here. And Virginia is the mother, and Elizabeth is the youngest of her 3 children. And what I find really, just tugs on my heartstrings is the fact that her oldest daughter is very, very typical. We don't have any other disabilities that we know of at this point. But her middle child, her son named Charles, and her youngest, Elizabeth, were actually diagnosed with autism at the same time. And so this is Virginia's story about Elizabeth because she has a very different type of autism than her brother. And she was not born with autism. And that's what makes this very, very interesting. I always thought that people were just born with autism and then they're diagnosed with it and then we just find a treatment method. And this is just me being ignorant. I haven't started my autism classes yet, so this was actually kind of eye-opening for me. But Elizabeth was a normal, thriving infant. She was a normal, thriving young toddler. And at 15 months old, she went and got the rest of her vaccines. And one of those vaccines included the MMR vaccine, which is measles, mumps, and rubella. And a week later, everything that she had learned verbally completely stopped. The joy and the emotions that you would see in someone's eyes completely stopped. So she now had a blank stare and no way of verbally communicating with anyone. And it took them until the age of 3 to finally diagnose her with autism. So from the age of 3 to about 8, Virginia is trying to take her to doctors, to specialists, to anybody who can try to find an avenue to either get Elizabeth to speak or to cure autism or have some type of treatment to make something better. And so Virginia takes this very relentless approach to make sure that Elizabeth is treated just like everybody else despite her autism. And it's really great because it talks about Virginia's struggle to keep her in a mainstream classroom and have her find her an aid that will actually help her and not hinder her growth. It talks about IQ testing and whether she's supposed to be in a gifted program, whether she's supposed to be in a special ed classroom, whether she's supposed to have an IEP, whether she's not supposed to have an IEP. It talks about all these different things, and Virginia is very open and honest about the things that most parents don't want to talk about when it comes to a child with autism. So she's very, very open and honest from a medical standpoint, but this biography is strictly about Elizabeth. And what's really, really sweet about Elizabeth is that she is super smart. She is super smart. I mean, it's crazy, the intelligence that kind of comes through here. But it took them until about the age of 8 or 9 for them to find an effective way for Elizabeth to communicate. And it actually took them to an autism specialist, which was really a woman who had a child with autism, and they just found an effective way of having a communication board. And it's not a communication board that we would normally think of. I think of a communication board as you press a button, it says the word for you, you find out what they need. But this is actually a regular sheet of paper that's laminated, and it has all the letters of the alphabet. And Elizabeth would point to the letters and create a word. And once she found that this was an effective way of communicating, she started writing poetry. And not just poetry like Dr. Seuss. This was actually profound poetry that helped you tap into Elizabeth's mind. And I say that very lightly, but I'm actually going to read a couple of her poems whenever we get to the end of this video. That way you can actually see at the age of 9 how profound this is. And it's just crazy to me. It's absolutely phenomenal to me how she can let this outlet come out. It's just wonderful. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Virginia keeps this struggle open and honest. She talks about how they decided to do ABA, which is Applied Behavior Analysis. If you haven't learned about it, I highly recommend that you do some research on it. I'm sure that you will learn it in some of your classes. I took a class specifically on ABA in one of my other schools. So I'm a big proponent of that, and it actually worked really well for Elizabeth. She talks about just different treatments, different methods, some that were experimental, some that were found to work, some did, some didn't. So, I mean, she's very raw, open, and honest. So this helps us understand the spiritual aspect of coming from a Christian family. This also talks about the medical aspect, just the work that goes into trying to find an outlet for a child with autism, the types of therapies that were needed. So this was a very, very eye-opening book. I highly recommend it. It's a very, very easy read. I didn't have any trouble reading it. It took me about 2 days off and on to read it. I stretched it out into 3 days, knowing that I almost had to order it. But it's a very easy read. It's about 245 pages, but you also have to take in consideration that she actually includes Elizabeth's poetry, and she also includes some of Elizabeth's commentary. So whenever she talks about different chapters, like about autism, she actually asks Elizabeth how she feels about having autism. And so Elizabeth has her own little commentary in there, so it's not as big as you think it is, which makes it really nice. It's just overwhelming when you see a book, and it's like, oh, okay. So, so other than that, I just wanted to kind of open up the book and talk about 2 little poems. And this is actually one of Elizabeth's poems at age 9, and I wanted to read it to you. It's called Me. I sometimes fear that people cannot understand that I hear and I know, and they don't believe I go to every extreme to try to express my need to talk. If only they could walk in my shoes, they would share my news. I am in here, and trying to speak every day in some kind of way. Like, I had to read that because this is age 9. This is right after she got her communication board. This is one of the first poems that she wrote. And she's like, I want them to share my news that I'm actually in here. Her little commentary about this, and she said, I wrote me to let people know that even though I don't speak, I feel and understand the world around me. I want to be heard and respected. I want that for everyone, especially for people like me. So at the age of 9, she understands that she's very different from everybody else. And throughout the book, she talks about how she wants world peace, how she wants the war to end, how she wants, the war in Iraq to end. She wants people in Iraq to be, to know that people are out there and they love them. She has this understanding of God that I wish I could comprehend. It's just absolutely, it's very inspirational to me to know that someone who can look at the world and see the world so differently that everybody else just can't see the fine details of this world. But this one is called Bright Future, and Virginia gives this poem first, and then she kind of turns it around. So this is one of the first poems that she wrote, and it's called Bright Future. So it says, when you see a tree, think of me, growing strong and tall. When you see the sun shining brightly, think of me, tough and mighty. When you see the water on the lake, think of the future I plan to make. Me, strong, mighty, free. So she uses this, and at first she took it as, she's in there and I don't really know how to handle this. She wants to have a bright future, but then at the end of the book, she turns it around and she uses the same poem to show everybody that she does have a bright future, that she just knows in her gut, she knows in her heart that Elizabeth will speak again. And in the epilogue of this book, you'll actually learn a little surprise that she starts saying a couple words. And I'm not going to spoil that for you because I know the book will go in a lot more detail. But I'm super excited. I want you guys to read this. Once again, it is called I Am In Here. It is Elizabeth Bunker and Virginia Breen. Along to supplement that, I did want to tell you about this. Elizabeth's poems were actually published in a PBS Newsweekly article. It was like a video article on PBS. And I am actually going to upload the YouTube link for you in Griffin Gate. So if you want to see it, that's great. I will actually try to do it up here in YouTube as well. That way you can just look on the comments and know where to go and look. But I highly recommend you look at this video too. So if you read the paper, it'll go a little bit more in detail about that. You listen to my bright and shining face, and then go ahead and go see the other YouTube video, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I highly recommend you read it. You'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot from a very different perspective that you probably haven't seen before. And good luck. Good luck with your finals. Good luck with the rest of the class, and I wish you well on the rest of your journey. Thanks, guys.